This is a brief video clip from a conference event recorded at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C., with speakers including America's 75th Attorney General, the Honorable Edwin Meese III, Honorable Becky Norton Dunlop, Natasha, Srdoc, Judge Henry Saad, and Joel Anand Samy. For the entire video, please visit Adriatic Institute's YouTube page. We realize that there have been some progress made in certain parts of Eastern Europe and also challenges in other parts of the region. When I look at what's transpiring in, for example, the Balkans, I also look at some of the unique stories that we hear from the Baltic region. And I call it sort of the Baltic blessings and the Balkan challenges. And before I share that very unique story about the changes that we see in the Baltics in comparison to the Balkans, I'd like to share just a brief story about our discussion with Milton Friedman. Dr. Friedman actually had traveled to a number of countries in the 1960s during his sabbatical, and he spent some time in Russia. He spent some time in former Yugoslavia, spent some time in Belgrade, went over to Sarajevo, and then also to Dubrovnik, and studied these different economies. And on the eve of founding and launching the Adriatic Institute for Public Policy, we visited with Milton and Rose Friedman and just asked them to provide some insights into their experiences and what happened in the Eastern European countries that they were advising and suggesting reforms. And the first thing that he shared with us was that learn from the experiences in Russia. Now, this is a gentleman who is a Nobel laureate, and he was very open, very transparent in his discussion, and shared that they made a mistake by pushing for the terms privatization, privatization, privatization. And instead, he said, this is Milton Friedman, saying that we should have stressed the rule of law, the rule of law, the rule of law. In fact, he mentioned that we had taken for granted that they would be these democratic institutions, the rule of law that would prevail in Russia, in other parts of Eastern Europe. And so, as Judge Saad was mentioning about the streets of Ukraine today, we do realize that without the rule of law, without protection of property rights, without having an independent judiciary, those issues really become challenges. I'll make my remarks very brief here. We have Attorney General Edwin Meese with us. But over the past decade, we can notice by looking at what has transpired in Southeast Europe by saying that over $100 billion of U.S. and EU taxpayer funds have gone into Southeast Europe in aid and in various other forms of assistance. But at the same time, as a slide that Natasha was sharing with us, that over $111.6 billion during that same period of time left the region via crime, corruption, and tax evasion. So while we taxpayers are funding aid projects, the same or equivalent amount of money leaves the country. In regard to the Baltic experience and the Balkan experiences, the uniqueness of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania were certainly unique. We had Martla in the country of Estonia that advanced free market principles, and also we had that unique opportunities to see the Nordic states have a tremendous positive influence in the Baltics. You had Sweden, you had Finland, and if you notice Finland's Transparency International report, it's one of the highest. So they brought those best practices, those higher standards to Estonia. However, when we look at what transpired in Croatia and much of the Southeast Europe region, we saw weak rule of law states, as Natasha indicated, with Austria not having strong anti-corruption laws. In fact, as a person who served on the AmCham Croatia board, the American Chamber of Commerce, we always noticed and observed that it was very difficult for American business to operate in Southeast Europe because American businesses had to uphold the American laws and the FCPA. And so they are not in a condition where a lot of the German or perhaps the Austrian companies that were listed were involved in bribery. They were limited because of America's rule of law. So we do see that important influence of the United States through the FCPA and other very important initiatives too. I'd just like to mention about the media freedom issue as well, which is so important in some of these countries which are making that important transition from a post-communist state. And I think it is important for leaders in the West, whether we look at Ukraine, Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia, all of those countries, Montenegro, for example, to truly encourage independent voices, support those that are in the media community, because they are the voices at the local level that are communicating the truth and encouraging their local individuals to complete that unfinished work. And so I'll just conclude by saying that we truly do need principled leadership, and America is a nation that has stood for the rule of law, protection of property rights, and it can certainly play a role in Europe, where we see the European Union has failed on so many different levels. And so we look forward to seeing this develop in the days to come, and look forward to the American leadership from both the Senate and the House also addressing some of these issues as well. Thank you. This is a brief video clip from a conference event recorded at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C., with speakers including America's 75th Attorney General, the Honorable Edwin Meese III, Honorable Becky Norton Dunlop, Natasha, Srdoc, Judge Henry Saad, and Anand Samy. For the entire video, please visit Adriatic Institute's YouTube page.